There's something about a man who lives alone by choice that tells you more than his words ever could. I've known ranchers who buried their hearts with their wives and spent the rest of their days just going through motions, feeding stock, mending fence, pouring coffee for ghosts. This is a story about one such man, and about how sometimes the thing that saves you comes from the last place you'd think to look. It's about second chances and the courage it takes to let someone stand beside you when you've gotten used to standing alone. Caleb Stone counted 3 buzzards circling his south pasture before the coffee in his tin cup went cold. He set the cup on the porch rail and stood there in his boots and shirt sleeves, watching those black shapes ride the thermals. Too many for a coyote, too far south for his cattle. The gray wool shawl hung on its peg inside the cabin door, where it had hung for 3 years. He didn't look at it when he went in for his duster, didn't look at the second plate he'd set out by habit and put back in the cupboard. Just grabbed his hat and rifle and headed for the barn. Steadfast whinnied when Caleb threw the saddle on. "Yeah, I know. Let's go see what's dead." But it wasn't what he expected to find. If you're listening from somewhere the sun rises over open land, I'd be grateful to know it. Sometimes a story finds the folks who need to hear it most. The arroyo cut 15 feet deep through red clay. Caleb saw the boot prints, 1st Cavalry. Regulation heel, heading east at a run. Then the brass shell casings, scattered in the dust. 6 of them. Winchester by the look. Under the scrub cedar, a woman sat with her back against stone, Apache. Dark hair loose past her shoulders. Doeskin dress torn at the shoulder where blood had soaked through and dried brown. Her left arm hung stiff at her side. The medicine pouch on her belt hung open and nearly empty. Caleb reined in 30 feet out, kept his hands visible on the saddle horn. She watched him. Didn't reach for the knife at her belt, just watched with eyes that measured everything. Her face was pale under the dust. Fever starting, maybe. He dismounted slow, ground-tied steadfast, took 3 steps forward and stopped. "Ma'am." Her gaze moved from his face to his empty hands to the canteen on his hip. Caleb unhooked it, held it out at arm's length, and set it in the dirt between them. Stepped back. She didn't move for 30 seconds, maybe more. Then her good hand reached out, trembling despite her control, and took it. She drank careful, 3 swallows, lowered the canteen, and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Thank you." English. Accented but clear. The words came rough like they hurt her throat. Caleb nodded when I touched her wounded shoulder, winced. The movement made her breath catch. "Arrow. Yesterday dawn." Her other hand pointed south, made a sign he didn't know, and she tapped her chest twice and spoke slower, like pulling up words from deep water. "Brother, sick. White medicine." She paused, searching. Her fingers made a gesture like drinking. "For fever. Quinine." She nodded once, sharp. Then her jaw tightened. "My husband. He worked for Army. Scout. He teach me white words before—" She stopped, didn't finish, "before soldiers killed him." Caleb heard it in what she didn't say. He calculated distances. Copper Falls, 5 hours if he pushed. Back by tomorrow noon. "I'll take you to town, get medicine, bring you back here after." She studied his face for a long time, looking for the lie, the trap. Her good hand gripped the canteen tight enough the knuckles showed white through brown skin. "You keep word, yes, ma'am." Her jaw tightened. She tried to stand and her legs buckled. Caleb moved without thinking, caught her arm, steadied her. She gasped pain from the wounded shoulder, but didn't pull away. Up close, he saw the fever glaze in her eyes, the dehydration cracks at her lips, the way her whole body trembled when she put weight on her feet. "Why you help?" The question stopped him. He didn't have an answer that made sense. "Because I can." She held his gaze, then nodded. Steadfast stamped and snorted. The horse's ears pricked forward toward the south trail, toward voices, distant, getting closer. "Men's voices. Speaking English. Coming this way." Caleb's hand went to the woman's good arm, pulled her behind the cedar. His other hand reached for Steadfast's bridle. The horse's nostrils flared. Caleb pressed his palm over the gelding's muzzle, held firm. The voices grew louder. 2 men, maybe 3, boots crunching on gravel. Saw tracks heading this way. Could be nothing. Could be Coyote. Coyote don't wear moccasins. Jenkins? The woman's breathing came fast and shallow against Caleb's shoulder. Her good hand gripped his shirt. He could feel the fever heat radiating off her skin. Steadfast's ears swiveled toward the voices. The horse shifted weight. Caleb's fingers tightened on the bridle, his lips near the gelding's ear. "Easy now." The boot set. "Close, maybe 20 yards up the arroyo." "See anything?" "Nah. Trail goes cold here. Probably doubled back." Silence. Long, heavy. And the boot started moving again. Away, back toward the east. Caleb waited and counted to 100. The voices faded to nothing. He released Steadfast's muzzle. The horse blew hard, shook his head. The woman stepped back, steadied herself against the rock. Her face had gone gray. "We need to move," Caleb said quiet. "Now." She nodded. He helped her into the saddle. She sat astride, legs shaking. He swung up behind her, pulled her back against his chest so she wouldn't fall. Her wounded shoulder pressed against his ribs. She stiffened but didn't protest. Steadfast moved out at a walk, north, away from the voices, away from the cavalry patrol. They rode in silence. The sun climbed. Heat pressed down like a hand on the back of Caleb's neck. The woman's weight sagged against him. Her head drooped forward, caught herself, straightened. First hour. Neither of them spoke. The land opened up. Sage stretched to the horizon, silver green in the hard light. Prickly pear clustered at the base of red stone outcrops. Heat waves rose and made the distant mesas shimmer like something not quite real. The woman shifted. Her wounded shoulder must have been throbbing. Caleb felt her wince through his shirt. Steadfast's breathing grew labored. Foam showed white on his neck. The double weight and the heat were getting to him. Ahead, a cluster of juniper offered shade. Caleb reined in. "Rest here." He dismounted first, helped her down. Her legs buckled when her feet hit ground. She caught herself on Steadfast's flank, left a smear of blood where her shoulder had bled through the makeshift bandage. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Her skin had gone waxy. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the dry heat. Caleb pulled jerky from his saddlebag, unwrapped the waxed muslin, handed her a piece. She took it, moved to the shade and sat with her back against the juniper trunk, chewed slow. He sat 10 feet away, ate his own piece. The salt made his mouth dry. He passed her the canteen. She drank, wiped her mouth, looked at him direct. "My name is Kaya. Caleb." She nodded once. Her hands moved to her hair, pulled it forward over her good shoulder, started separating it into 3 sections. Her fingers worked steady despite the tremor, over, under, through. The braid grew downward in a tight black rope, each movement practiced, automatic. Caleb watched without meaning to. The way her hands knew exactly where to go, no hesitation, just the smooth repetition of something done 1,000 times. She spoke while braiding, her voice low, careful with the English words. Running Wolf, my husband, he try to understand white man's law. He say they write on paper we can stay on land, our land, land of my grandfather's grandfather. Her fingers kept moving. But paper mean nothing when soldiers come with fire. Caleb's jaw tightened. He'd seen it, once. Adobe walls still smoking, livestock scattered, a child's doll trampled in the dirt. You see this happen? Her eyes stayed on her hands, on the braid. He swallowed. Once. Then you know? He did. He nodded. Her braid reached the middle of her back now. She tied it off with a strip of rawhide from her belt, tucked it behind her shoulder. Brother is Nahali, 14 summers. Soldiers burn our camp last moon. They say accident. Her voice stayed flat, no anger in it, just fact. We scatter. Nahel too sick to run far. I stay with him. You risked everything for a boy. She looked at him then. Really looked. He is family. You understand family. The shawl flashed in his mind. Gray wool hanging on the peg. Sarah's hands knitting by lamplight. Her belly round under her apron. Their daughter who never drew breath. His throat closed up. I did. Once. Kaya's gaze stayed steady on his face, reading something there. Then you understand. The silence after that felt different, not uncomfortable, just present. A hawk cried somewhere high up. Steadfast lipped at the sparse grass near the juniper roots. Caleb stood, brushed dust off his pants. We should move. 5 more hours to town if we keep steady. She rose sower, careful of the shoulder. This town, they sell medicine to Apache woman. They'll sell to me. And if they ask why you buy, Caleb looked at her, at the dried blood on her dress, at the way she held herself upright despite the fever and the pain and the fear. Then I'll tell them it's my business. They mounted again, her in front this time, leaning back against his chest, his arms on either side of her to hold the reins. She was lighter than he'd thought, all bone and muscle and stubborn will to survive. Steadfast moved out at a walk. 2 hours passed. The sun angled west. Shadows grew long from the sage. Kaya spoke again, her voice quieter now, almost to herself. Nahel, he likes stories. I tell him about when father hunt elk, about when mother make first dress for me. Pause. Now maybe I tell him story about white man who help us. Caleb's hands tightened on the reins. Don't make me something I'm not. I don't. I just tell what is true. Truth. That he'd found her dying and couldn't walk away. That he'd lost enough already and maybe saving someone else would fill the hole a little. Just a little. But he didn't say that. What happened to your parents? Cholera. 6 winters passed. I'm sorry. Are you? The question landed hard. Was he sorry? Sorry enough to do something, or just sorry, the way people are sorry about things that don't touch them? He didn't answer. The trail curved around a red stone outcrop. Petroglyphs spiraled across the rock face, ancient marks, hands and animals and symbols. He didn't understand. That's old work, he said. My grandfather's grandfather, maybe. Or before. before any white man see this place. The sun touched the horizon. Orange light flooded the valley ahead. And there, smoke rose from a dozen chimneys. Copper Falls. Kaya's whole body went rigid against his chest. Her breathing changed. Faster. Shallower. They won't sell to me. You know this. They'll sell to me. And when they see me, Apache woman, on your horse, what then? Caleb looked at the town, at the people who'd watched him bury Sarah, who'd stopped coming by after the first month, who'd let him disappear into his grief without protest. Then they'll talk. Let them. But even as he said it, weight settled in his gut. Because talk in a frontier town wasn't just talk, it was judgment, consequence, lines drawn, and he was about to cross one. Main Street ran straight through Copper Falls like a scar. False front buildings stood shoulder to shoulder, their paint peeling in long strips. Dust hung thick in the air from the afternoon stage. Horses lined the hitch rails 3 deep outside the saloon. Caleb reined in at the edge of town, let steadfast blow. The gelding's sides heaved. Foam showed white on his neck. Behind him, Kaya sat rigid. Her good hand gripped the saddle horn. The wounded shoulder bled again, fresh red soaking through the doeskin. I wait here, she said. No. Caleb nudged steadfast forward. You're with me. Her fingers tightened on the saddle. Caleb, we get the medicine. We leave. That's all. But his gut knew better. Nothing was ever that simple. They rode down Main Street at a walk. Steadfast's hooves rang on the packed earth. Too loud. Everything too loud. Old man Perkins stopped mid-swing with his hammer outside the livery. Stood there, staring. His mouth open, closed. A woman sweeping her porch froze. The broom fell from her hands, clattered on the boards. 2 men outside the saloon saw them. One elbowed the other. Both turned, watched. Whispers started, spread like wind through dry grass. That stone and got an Apache with him, wounded. Look at her shoulder. Caleb kept his eyes forward. Didn't acknowledge the stares, didn't explain, just rode. He pulled up in front of Grissom's Mercantile, the biggest store in town. Glass windows on either side of the door showing bolts of fabric, tools, provisions stacked neat on shelves. He dismounted, tied steadfast to the rail. The horse's legs trembled. They'd pushed too hard. Kaya slid down on the far side, used the horse for a balance. Her face had gone the color of old paper. You sure? Caleb asked quiet. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, stepped around the horse to stand beside him. They walked to the door together, his boots, her moccasins. No sound from hers. Caleb opened the door. The bell jangled overhead. The store went dead silent. 4 people inside. Mrs. Henderson, near the fabric bolts, her hands flew to her mouth, gasped, backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. 2 cowboys by the tobacco counter. The younger one's hand moved to his gun, stopped halfway, his eyes wide. Grissom himself behind the main counter, spectacles low on his nose, ledger open. His face went white, then red, then white again. Every eye locked on Kaya. Grissom's pen clattered on the counter. Stone. What in the... He caught himself. Swallowed. What's the meaning of this? Kaya stepped forward before Caleb could speak, her moccasins silent on the wood floor. She walked straight to the counter. Didn't look at Mrs. Henderson, pressed against the wall. Didn't look at the cowboys with their hands near their guns. Just walked. She stopped in front of Grissom, met his eyes. Quinine, how much? The shopkeeper's face darkened. His hands flattened on the counter. Don't sell medicine to Indians. The words dropped heavy. Final. Mrs. Henderson made a small sound. The older cowboy spat into the brass spittoon. The sound rang out like a gunshot. Kaya's jaw tightened, but she didn't step back. Caleb moved to stand beside her, not in front. Beside, close enough for their shoulders almost touched. How much for me, then? Grissom's eyes narrowed. He looked from Caleb to Kaya and back. You know what folks'll say, stone. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Grissom leaned forward. His knuckles went white on the counter. You know whose land she's from. You know what her people been. I know she's injured. I know her brother's dying of fever. I know I got money and you got medicine. Silence stretched out. The clock on the wall ticked, each second loud enough to count. Mrs. Henderson gathered her fabric, clutched it to her chest, hurried past them, gave Kaya a wide berth like she might catch something. The door jangled. She was gone. The younger cowboy shifted his weight. Leather creaked, his hand still hovering near his gun. Grissom straightened, took off his spectacles, polished them on his apron, put them back on. His hands shook slightly. Quinine's $2. Carbolic soap, 20 cents. Bandages, 30. Caleb reached into his vest pocket, pulled out the coins, 4 silver dollars. He set them on the counter one at a time. Each one rang clear, bright. The sound filled the store. Everyone watched those coins. Grissom stared at them. His hand hovered like he might refuse. Then he turned, reached up to the shelf behind him, pulled down a brown glass bottle, and set it on the counter hard enough the glass clinked. Added a cake of carbolic soap, a roll of muslin bandage. His movements jerky, angry. Caleb looked at the supplies, at the candy jars on the counter, the burlap sacks of coffee against the wall, the salt pork hanging from hooks in the rafters. I'll take coffee, too. 2 pounds. Salt puck, that piece there, and he pointed at the glass jar, red and white striped sticks. Those peppermints, 6. Grissom's jaw clenched. For her, for a sick boy who needs something to look forward to. The shopkeeper's face went darker, but he got the coffee, weighed it out on the brass scale. The weights clinked. He wrapped it in brown paper. Movements sharp. Added the pork wrapped in muslin. Counted out 6 peppermint sticks and dropped them in a small paper sack, like he was throwing stones. Piled everything on the counter. $7.80. Caleb counted out 3 more silver dollars, 4 dimes from his pocket, slid them across the wood. The coins scraped loud. Grissom took them, dropped them in his cash drawer one by one, each coin clanking, slammed the drawer shut. Caleb gathered the supplies, handed the medicine and peppermints to Kaya, kept the rest himself, heavy in his arms. They turned toward the door. Stone, Caleb stopped. Didn't turn around. Grissom's voice came low, tight. You're making enemies. Real ones. Caleb looked back over his shoulder, met the man's eyes. Been alone this long. Few more won't hurt. He pushed the door open. The bell jangled again, harsh, discordant. Outside, the crowd had grown, 12 people now, standing in small groups, watching, waiting to see what would happen. Caleb loaded the supplies into his saddlebag, his hands steady, deliberate. Let them watch. Let them talk. Kaya stood beside Steadfast, her face composed, but her good hand gripped the medicine bottle tight enough her knuckles showed bone white under brown skin. A man stepped forward from the crowd. Tom Webster ran the feed store. Good man usually. Fair, salt and pepper beard, weathered face. Had helped Caleb build his barn 5 years back. Caleb, Webster's voice carried. You know what you're doing? I do, Tom. You know there was trouble south of here 2 days back, cavalry chasing raiders. Found a burned wagon. Family killed. Kaya's whole body went rigid. Caleb's jaw tightened. This woman was running from that. Look at her shoulder. She got shot with an arrow. You think raiders shoot their own? Webster's mouth tightened. Army might not see it that way. Then the army can come ask me about it. Another voice from the crowd. Younger. Caleb didn't recognize the man. Ranch hand, maybe. Dusty clothes. Sunburned face. Should have left her where you found her. Let nature take its course. Caleb's hand stopped moving. He turned slow, found the speaker. Kid, maybe 20, trying to look tough in front of the others. Say that again. The kid's face paled, but his jaw set. I said, I heard you. Caleb took 2 steps toward him. Not fast, not threatening, just moving, close enough to see the sweat on the kid's upper lip. You ever been shot? You ever been hungry? You ever watched someone you love die because nobody'd help? The kid's jaw worked. No words came. Didn't think so. Caleb turned back to his horse. Come on. He mounted, reached down. Kaya took his hand, her palm hot with fever, and swung up behind him. Her wounded shoulder pressed against his back. She didn't make a sound, but he felt her body go rigid with pain. Steadfast shifted under the double weight. Caleb's knees tightened. The horse steadied. They rode down Main Street at a walk. Not hurrying, not running, just moving. The crowd parted. Silent. Faces hard, some angry, some uncertain, some like Webster just watching, thinking. At the far end of town, past the last building, Caleb let Steadfast stretch into a trot. Not fast enough to worry the tired horse, just enough to put distance between them and all those staring eyes. Behind them, Copper Falls faded into dust and evening shadow. Kaya's hand gripped his shoulder. Her voice came quiet, almost lost in the hoofbeats. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We got 5 hours back, and your brother's still sick. They had the medicine, but they'd paid a price for it. The kind of price that came due later, in whispers, in turned backs, in trouble that built slow like storm clouds on the horizon. Steadfast's breathing came steady, the rhythm of distance being covered, of choices made that couldn't be unmade. The sun dropped toward the horizon. Long shadows stretched across the sage. Ahead, Caleb's land waited, his empty cabin, his solitary life, except it wouldn't be solitary anymore. Not after this. He'd stood beside an Apache woman in front of the whole town, bought medicine for her brother, made it clear whose side he was on. There was no walking that back. The thoughts should have worried him, should have made his hands shake on the reins, but all he felt was Kaya's weight against his back, the medicine bottle secure in his saddlebag, the knowledge that somewhere in a hidden canyon, a sick boy waited for help that was finally coming. 3 years he'd been going through motions, existing but not living, Now every choice felt sharp, real, like waking up after a long sleep. Steadfast ears pricked forward, the horse's stride hitched, just slightly. Caleb scanned the trail ahead, saw nothing, but the gelding didn't spook at nothing. Then he heard it, faint. From the south, hoofbeats, multiple horses, coming fast. Rain started as they crested the rise to Caleb's land. Big drops, warm. They hit his shoulders and made dark spots in the dust on Steadfast's neck. The cabin sat dark against gray sky. No smoke from the chimney. Nobody had been there to light the fire. Caleb reined in at the porch, dismounted, reached up to help Kaya down. She gripped his forearm with her good hand, swung her leg over. When her feet hit ground, her knees buckled. She caught herself on the saddle, stood there breathing hard. "I got you." His arm around her waist, supporting most of her weight. She leaned into him, no choice, her body burning with fever through the wet doeskin. He got her inside, settled her in the chair nearest the door. She sat heavy. Her wounded shoulders sagged forward. Caleb struck a match, lit the coal oil lamp on the table. Yellow lights spread across the room, dust on everything. 3 years' worth. The table, the second chair, the cold fireplace. The shawl hung on its peg beside the door. Gray wool, untouched. He turned away from it, went to the dry sink, filled the dented kettle from the water bucket, set it on the cook stove. The stove was cold. He opened the firebox, crumpled newspaper, laid in pine kindling, struck another match. The paper caught. Flames licked up orange around the wood. He added larger pieces, cedar splits. The fire grew. Heat began to radiate. The kettle sat on the stovetop, waiting for the metal to heat. Small ticking sounds as it expanded. Caleb turned. Kaya watched him. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. "How bad is it?" "Not bad, just needs proper cleaning." "I cleaned it. Not with carbolic. Not the way it should be done." She said nothing, just kept her hands on the table. The kettle started to tick louder as the metal heated. Steam wouldn't come for a while yet. Caleb unwrapped the bandages he'd bought, found clean muslin rags in the cupboard behind the flour sack, set them beside the carbolic soap. The brown bottle caught the lamplight. Steam began to rise from the kettle spout. Thin wisps at first, then stronger. He used a rag to grip the handle, poured hot water into the wash basin, added cold from the bucket, tested it with his finger. Hot but not scalding. Kaya stood, her movements careful. She turned her back to him, reached up to the shoulder of her dress with her good hand, started to pull the doeskin down. "Hold on!" Caleb's voice came rough. "There's laces." She stopped, waited. His hands found the rawhide ties at her shoulder, wet from the rain. The knots had swollen tight. He worked them loose, fingers clumsy. 1 knot, 2, 3. The doeskin parted. She pulled it down past her shoulder. The bandage underneath was brown with old blood. Fresh red seeped through at the center where the movement had opened it again. Caleb's jaw tightened. He dipped a clean rag in the hot water, wrung it out, pressed it against the edge of the bandage. Let the heat soften the dried blood that had glued fabric to skin. Kaya's breathing stayed even, controlled. The bandage loosened. He peeled it back, slow. The wound underneath a furrow across the top of her shoulder. The arrow had grazed her. 2 inches long. Deep enough to bleed heavy, but not deep enough to hit bone or muscle that mattered. The edges looked clean. No green. No smell of rot. but the skin around it showed red, hot. Infection trying to start. He dropped the old bandage on the table, picked up the carbolic soap, worked it between his wet hands until it lathered white. This'll sting. I know. He pressed the soapy rag against the wound. She sucked air through her teeth. Her good hand shot out, gripped the chair back. Knuckles went bone white. Caleb worked quick but thorough, cleaned from one end of the wound to the other, rinsed with hot water. The water in the basin turned pink, then red. Kaya's shoulders trembled once, then went still, rigid. He dried the wound with a clean rag, opened the muslin bandage roll, cut a length with his pocket knife, folded it into a pad, pressed it against her shoulder. Hold this. Her hand came up, held the pad in place. Her fingers shook. He wrapped the bandage around her shoulder, under her arm, back over the top, 3 times around, tied it off with a square knot. His hand steady despite everything. Done. She pulled the doeskin back up over her shoulder, worked the laces herself. Her fingers moved slow but certain. Thank you. Caleb dumped the basin water out the door. The rain had picked up. Steady now. He rinsed the basin, set it to drain. When he turned back, Kaya had moved to the fireplace. She knelt in front of it, her good hand arranging kindling even though the cook stove was already lit. Fireplace draws better for cooking, he said, then stopped, realizing she knew that, had probably cooked over open fires her whole life. She glanced back, almost smiled, didn't quite. He brought kindling from the box, newspaper. She laid them in the fireplace with quick movements. He lit it. The flames caught, grew. He added larger wood. The fire climbed. Kaya stood and went to his saddlebag, still sitting by the door, pulled out the wrapped salt pork, the coffee, set them on the table. You have beans, Caleb nodded, went to the cupboard, found the cloth sack, half full, poured some into a bowl. She took it, started picking through them, checking for stones. He hung the Dutch oven on the iron hook above the fire, added water from the kettle, the beans, a chunk of salt pork cut thick with his knife. They worked without talking, her moving around his kitchen like she'd been there before. Him watching from the corner of his eye. Strange to see someone else touch his things. Strange, but not wrong. The beans started to simmer. The smell filled the cabin. Salt and pork fat and wood smoke. Caleb mixed cornmeal and water and a pinch of salt in a bowl, formed it into a rough cake, set it in the cast iron skillet at the edge of the coals. The rain drummed on the roof. The only sounds were the fire crackling and the beans bubbling and their breathing. Kaya sat at the table, her hands in her lap. Looking at the shawl on the peg, Caleb saw her looking. His chest tightened. He turned back to the fire. The cornbread browned. He flipped it. The other side hissed against hot iron. When everything was ready, he dished beans into 2 wooden bowls, cut the cornbread in half, poured coffee into 2 tin cups. The first time both cups had been used in 3 years. Set it all on the table, sat down across from her. They ate. The beans were plain, just salt and pork. The cornbread dry. Needed butter. The coffee strong and bitter. But it was food. Shared. Kaya's spoon scraped the bottom of her bowl. She set it down, looked at him direct. That shawl. Someone you lost? His spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down slow. The metal clinked against the bowl. Long silence. My wife. The words felt like pulling splinters. And our daughter. Same day, Kaya waited. Didn't push, just waited. Midwife said. His throat closed. He swallowed hard. Said sometimes there's nothing can be done. Baby was turned wrong. Sarah, she... He couldn't finish. The fire popped. A log shifted. Sparks flew up the chimney. I'm sorry. 3 years ago. Should be past it by now. Should... Her voice carried something he couldn't name. Who decides when grief ends? He had no answer. She looked down at her hands, calloused, scarred. Hands that had worked and fought and survived. My husband. Running wolf. Soldiers shot him. 3 winters passed. They say he steal cattle. Her jaw tightened. He was hunting deer for our family. Caleb's chest tightened. When? 3 winters. He met her eyes. 3 years for me, too. They sat in the silence after that. The fire crackled. Outside, a coyote called. Distant, another answered. The temperature had dropped with the rain. Cold seeped through the walls. Kaya pulled her arms tight around herself. The wet doeskin dress clung to her skin. Hadn't dried. Couldn't dry properly. Caleb stood, his chair scraped loud on the floor. He walked to the peg. His hand reached out, stopped 6 inches from the gray wool. For 3 years he hadn't touched it. Couldn't. Looking at it was hard enough. His hand shook. He forced his fingers to close around the wool. It felt like touching something that would burn him, but it didn't burn. It just felt soft, worn, the way Sarah's hands had felt when she'd held his. He pulled it off the peg, turned, walked to Kaya, draped it over her shoulders. Cold tonight. She looked up at him, her eyes dark in the lamplight. Her hands came up, pulled the shawl close around her. She understood. He could see it in her face. She knew what it cost. Thank you. He nodded, couldn't speak, went back to his chair, sat down heavy. They sat there, the shawl around her shoulders. Sarah's shawl, the one she'd made while carrying their daughter. Each stitch a prayer for a baby who'd never drawn breath. And now it warmed someone else. Maybe that was right. Maybe Sarah would have wanted it. Or maybe he was lying to himself. He didn't know. The coffee had gone cold in his cup. He drank it anyway. Kaya's eyes were closing. Her head drooped forward, caught herself, straightened. You take the bed, Caleb said. I'll sleep in the chair. No. I sleep on the bed, his voice firm. You're injured. You got fever. You need rest. She started to argue, stopped, nodded. The rope bed stood in the corner, corn husk mattress on top, 1 blanket, 1 pillow that had lost most of its feathers. Kaya walked to it, sat down on the edge. The ropes creaked under her weight. She lay down slow, careful of the shoulder, pulled the blanket up, the shawl still around her shoulders. Caleb banked the fire, blew out the lamp, sat in the chair in the darkness. His eyes adjusted. He could see the outline of her on the bed, could hear her breathing slow, deepen, sleep. He closed his own eyes. But sleep didn't come. His mind kept working. Tomorrow they'd ride to find her brother. Give him the medicine. Hope it wasn't too late. Then what? Then Kaya and Haley would need to move on. Find somewhere safer. Somewhere the cavalry wouldn't look. And Caleb would go back to his empty cabin. His solitary life. His coffee, for one. That's what made sense. But sitting there in the dark, listening to someone else breathe in his space for the first time in 3 years, he realized the emptiness felt different now. Less like peace, more like absence. Outside, the rain stopped. The silence after felt heavy. Then he heard it, faint at first. Hoofbeats, coming up the trail to his cabin. At this hour, after dark, his hand went to the rifle propped against the wall. The hoofbeats grew louder. A single horse. Moving careful. Not rushed. Caleb stood, moved to the window, stayed to the side where he couldn't be seen. A rider appeared in the yard, dismounted, tied his horse to the porch rail. Then a voice, familiar. "Stone, you in there. It's Tom Webster. Need to talk." Caleb lowered the rifle, set it against the wall, opened the door. Webster stood on the porch, hat dripping, coat soaked through. His face looked gray in the darkness. His horse behind him blowing hard, sides heaving, foam on its neck. "Tom, it's late." "I know." Webster's eyes moved past Caleb to the dark cabin, to where Kaya slept on the bed. He couldn't see her, but he knew she was there. "Need to talk. Now." Caleb stepped aside. Webster came in. His boots tracked mud across the floor. He pulled off his hat. Water dripped from the brim onto the boards. "She here? She's injured, sleeping." Webster nodded and lowered his voice. "Harding's asking questions in town. Officer from Fort Grant. Wants to know about unauthorized Apaches on settler land. Wants to know exact boundaries of properties near reservation territory." Caleb's jaw tightened. He say why. Didn't have to. He's got orders. Clear any Apaches off private land. Been a push from the territorial governor. Webster paused. "He's giving you 7 days. Caleb, maybe 10 if you're lucky. After that, he follows through. 7 days starting when? Tomorrow dawn? Not enough time, but it would have to be." "I hear you." Webster put his hat back on, turned to leave, stopped at the door, looked back. "For what it's worth, Sarah would have done the same thing. Help that woman." He left before Caleb could answer. The hoofbeats faded into the night. Webster pushing his tired horse back toward town, through the taint dark. Caleb stood in the doorway. 7 days, maybe 10. To get Nahale the medicine, to get them somewhere safe, to figure out where safe even was anymore. He closed the door, barred it, went back to his chair. This time sleep came, but not deep, not restful. Just enough to rest his body while his mind kept working through problems that had no good solutions. Dawn broke gray and cold. Caleb woke to the smell of coffee. He sat up in the chair. Kaya stood at the stove, stirring something in the pot. Her movements careful, favoring the wounded shoulder. "Morning." She turned, handed him a cup, steam rising from black coffee. "Thank you." She nodded, went back to the stove. He drank. The coffee was strong. Good. Different from how he made it. Better, maybe, and they ate quick. Beans from last night. Cornbread. More coffee. Neither spoke much. After. Caleb saddled, steadfast. The horse was rested, but his shoulders still showed wear from yesterday's double load. They'd have to go careful. Kaya came out, the shawl around her shoulders against the morning cold, and she'd tucked the medicine bottle and peppermint sticks into her medicine pouch. He mounted, pulled her up behind him, her hand on his shoulder, the touch familiar now. Steadfast moved out at a walk, south into canyon country. The trail Kaya knew. She guided him with words. Left at the twisted cedar, right where the stones make a face, straight through the narrow place. He followed. The landmarks she saw. He missed half of them, but she knew, had marked them in her mind during her flight from the soldiers. 2 hours in. The canyon walls rose steep on both sides. Red stone streaked with black. The path narrowed to barely wide enough for a horse. Steadfast's hooves rang on bare rock. Here, Kaya said. Just ahead, the canyon opened into a hidden hollow. Red walls curved around like hands cupped to hold water. A spring trickled from a crack in the rock face, pooled clear before disappearing underground. Under an overhang, a small camp, a bedroll, a fire ring with cold ashes, and there a boy curled on his side under a thin blanket. Kaya slid off before Steadfast stopped, ran to him. Nahale! She dropped to her knees beside the boy, her hands on his face, his forehead. Caleb dismounted, tied Steadfast to scrub juniper, walked over. The boy was small, 14 but looked younger, thin, black hair plastered to his skull with sweat, his skin burning, eyes closed, breathing fast and shallow like he couldn't get enough air. Kaya's hands moved over him, checking. Her fingers trembled despite her trying to control them. Caleb knelt on the other side, touched the boy's forehead. Heat radiated off him that could have lit kindling. How long's he been like this? Since 2 days, getting worse. Her voice cracked. Just barely. Caleb looked at the camp. The fire almost dead. Just ash and a few glowing coals. No food visible. The water skin hanging from a branch empty when he touched it. Fire first. Water. I'll get wood. He stood, scanned the area. Dead juniper branches scattered among the rocks. He gathered them, armfuls, brought them back. Kaya had the fire going, small flames licking through the ash. She'd found wood somewhere, added it careful. Caleb stacked the juniper beside the fire ring, broke branches into lengths, added 3 to the flames. The fire grew. Heat spread. He took the water skin, went to the spee, filled it. The water cold and clear. Brought it back. Poured water into the tin pot from the boys' camp. Set it on stones at the edge of the fire. They worked without talking, her medical knowledge, his practical skill, moving together like they'd done this before. The water started to heat. Small bubbles formed on the bottom of the pot. Kaya pulled out the quinine bottle, broke the seal. The smell sharp, bitter, like medicine should smell. She measured careful, poured powder into the warming water, stirred with a stick from the fire. Nahale moaned, his head turned side to side. His lips moved, but no words came. Just sounds of pain and fever dreams. Kaya spoke in Apache, soft, soothing. Words Caleb didn't understand, but the tone was clear. Comfort, reassurance. The water heated faster, started to steam. She lifted the pot with a rag, let it cool enough to drink. Tested it against her wrist the way mothers do. She knelt beside her brother, lifted his head with her good arm. The wounded shoulder made her wince, but she didn't stop. Held the pot to his lips. Drink, little brother. He tried, coughed. Water spilled down his chin. Again. This time he swallowed. Once, twice, 3 times, the quinine going down. She lowered his head back to the bedroll, pulled the blanket up to his chin even though he was burning. Caleb added more wood to the fire, The boy needed heat, needed to sweat the sickness out. He looked at the camp. Barely anything here. Maybe 3 days of supplies if you stretched out of them. They'd been running, hiding, trying to survive on nothing. You got food for him? Kaya shook her head. Caleb went to his saddlebag, pulled out the salt pork, cut a piece, added it to what was left of the water in the pot, set it back by the fire, let it simmer. The fat would give the boy strength when he could eat. He sat on a rock, waited. Kaya sat beside her brother, her hand on his forehead, checking, always checking. Time stretched. The sun climbed higher. The canyon walls trapped heat. The air grew thick. Nahal's breathing stayed fast. His skin stayed hot. The fever holding on. Caleb found himself talking. Didn't plan to. Just started. Had a horse once, before Steadfast. Mare named Dancer. Prettiest dapple gray you ever saw. He paused, fed another branch to the fire. One summer we crossed a river. Current was strong. Water high. Dancer panicked. Reared up. Threw me clean off. I went under. Kaya's eyes stayed on Nahale, but Caleb saw her listening. Horse could have run. Could have saved herself. But she circled back. Grabbed my collar in her teeth. Dragged me to shore. He looked at the boy, at Kaya's hand on his forehead. Point is, sometimes creatures know what matters. They help even when it's hard. Even when it costs them. Nahale's eyes moved behind closed lids. Still fevered, still dreaming, but maybe hearing something. The sun reached its peak, started down the other side of the sky. Shadows shifted on the canyon walls. Caleb dozed, sitting up, his back against red stone, warm from the sun. Woke when Kaya gasped. His eyes opened. She was leaning over Nahale, her hand on his chest. What? His breathing, it changed. Caleb moved closer, knelt, put his hand on the boy's forehead. Still hot, still burning, but maybe not quite as fierce as before. Could be the quinine starting to work, but it takes time, days sometimes. Kaya nodded, her jaw set. Then we wait days. They fed Nahale more quinine that evening, then again at dawn the next day. The boy took it better each time, less coughing, more swallowing, but the fever stayed, high, relentless. On the second day, Nahale's eyes opened once, glassy, unfocused. He looked at Kaya, tried to speak. Nothing came out but a rasp. Shh, rest. Medicine is working. You will heal. His eyes closed again, that night. Kaya slept pressed against her brother, her good arm around him, trying to give him warmth or take heat from him. Caleb couldn't tell which. He kept the fire going, fed it through the night, dozed in shifts. Third day, more quinine, more waiting, more of Nahale burning with fever that wouldn't break. Caleb made broth from the last of the salt pork. Got the boy to drink some. Not much, but some. Kaya's face had gone hollow, dark circles under her eyes. She barely ate, just watched her brother, waiting for a sign. Fourth day dawned cold. Caleb woke stiff, his back aching from sleeping on stone. He checked Nahale, put his hand on the boy's forehead, stopped, put his hand on again, making sure. The skin was still warm, but not burning, not like before. Kaya. She woke instant, alert. What? Feel his forehead. She did. Her eyes widened. The fever, it's breaking. She checked again. her hand on his cheeks, his neck, his chest, everywhere, making sure it was real. Tears started down her face, silent. She didn't wipe them away. Caleb added wood to the fire, made coffee. The smell filled the canyon. An hour later, Nahalie's eyes opened, clear this time, focused. He looked at Kaya, recognition there. Then his eyes moved to Caleb. Fear showed plain. The boy tried to sit up. Too weak, fell back. Kaya spoke rapid Apache, her hands on his shoulders, keeping him down, explaining, pointing at Caleb, at the medicine bottle, at the fire, at the empty pot that had held broth. Understanding crept into the boy's face. He looked at Caleb for a long moment, then his hand moved, slow, shaking. Reached out. Caleb leaned forward, took the boy's hand in his, small, still hot, trembling, but alive. "You're tough," Caleb said. "Tougher than most men I know." Nahale didn't understand the words, but he heard the tone. His grip tightened, just barely, then released. Caleb sat back. Something in his chest felt different. Not loose exactly, just breathing easier. They fed Nahale more broth. He kept it down, drank water, kept that down too. By evening, he was sitting up, propped against the canyon wall, still pale, still weak, but alive, healing. Kaya cried again, quiet, relief finally catching up to fear. Fifth day, Nahale ate solid food. Not much, but enough. He spoke to Kaya in Apache. She answered, their voices soft, familial. He looked at Caleb often, wary still, but curious now instead of scared. Sixth day. The boy stood, legs shaking, but standing. Kaya helped him walk to the spring, let him wash his face, drink fresh water. Caleb watched it them, brother and sister, survivors. He should feel good, should feel satisfied. He'd saved a life, done something that mattered, but instead he felt the weight of what came next. 7 days, Webster had said, maybe 10. They were on day 6 now. Nahale could walk, but barely. Couldn't travel far. Couldn't run if soldiers came. They needed more time, but time was the one thing they didn't have. That evening, Caleb told Kaya about Webster's warning, about Harding, about the deadline that was almost up. She listened, her face still. How many days left? Maybe 4, maybe less. Nahale cannot travel far yet. I know. Silence. The fire crackled. The spring trickled. There might be a way, Caleb said, but you won't like it. Tell me. We go to my ranch, all of us. You stay there, on my land, under my protection. Makes it harder for Harding. He'd have to go through legal channels, get proper warrants, follow procedure, buys us time, and makes you a target. Maybe. Not maybe, for certain. She looked at him direct. Why would you do this? Good question. He didn't have a good answer. Because I can. It was what he had told her in the arroyo. Seemed to be the only truth he had. She studied his face. This will cost you everything, maybe. Maybe. And you would still do it. He thought about his empty cabin. His 3 years of going through motions. His life that had been frozen since Sarah died. Thought about the shawl on Kaya's shoulders. About Nahale's hand reaching out to his. About coffee made by someone else's hands. Yeah, I would. Kaya nodded slow. Then we go to your ranch. Tomorrow. Dawn. Nahale needs 1 more day of rest. Tomorrow. she agreed. But that night, Caleb couldn't sleep. Because he knew what was coming, knew that bringing Kaya and Nahele to his land was choosing sides publicly, was standing up to be counted, was ending 3 years of being invisible. And somewhere in Copper Falls, Officer Harding was making his own plans. Plans that wouldn't account for one rancher's conscience. 7th day. Nahale could walk without help, still weak, still pale, but healing. They left the canyon at dawn. Caleb rode steadfast. Nahale sat in front of him in the saddle. The boy weighed almost nothing, all bone and fever-wasted muscle. Kaya walked beside them, the shawl around her shoulders, her hand on Steadfast's flank for balance. Her wounded arm moved better now, still stiff, but improving. The ride to Caleb's ranch took 3 hours. They went slow, stopped twice to let Nahale rest. When they crested the rise, the cabin sat against the sky, dark, waiting. Caleb helped Nahale down. The boy's legs shook. Kaya steadied him. Inside, Caleb got the fire going, boiled water, made coffee, put beans on to soak. Kaya settled Nahale on the bed, the boy's eyes already closing, exhausted from the short journey. "He needs more time," Kaya said. "I know, but we're out of supplies. I need to go to town." Her face tightened. "Harding, I'll be careful." He saddled Steadfast again. The horse was tired but willing, always willing. The ride to Copper Falls took 4 hours. Caleb pushed harder than he should have. Got there mid-afternoon. The town looked the same. False fronts, dust, horses at the rails. But something felt different. A tension in the air, like everyone waiting for thunder. He tied Steadfast outside the general store. Not Grissom's. Different one. Smaller, run by a widow named Mrs. Hatch. She'd been kind after Sarah died. Brought food for 2 weeks without asking for anything. Inside, he bought quick flour, beans, salt, coffee, paid, left. Voices carried from the saloon as he loaded supplies into his saddlebag, loud enough to hear from the street. Spotted them south of his land yesterday. Woman and a boy. Harding's riding out into the week. Caleb's hands stopped moving on the saddlebag strap. He tied off Steadfast, looked at the saloon, swinging doors, dark inside, smell of whiskey and tobacco smoke drifting out. He hadn't been in a saloon since the night before Sarah died. She'd asked him, begged him to stop drinking. Said it changed him. Made him mean. He'd promised. Kept that promise even after she was gone. But this wasn't about drinking. He walked to the doors, pushed through. The place went quiet. 6 men inside, 3 at the bar, 2 at a table playing cards, 1 standing near the window. And there in uniform. Brass buttons catching light from the window. Officer Harding, 30 maybe, tall. Mustache waxed to points. Next to him, 2 enlisted men, younger, nervous-looking, Bambi eye turned to Caleb. Harding's hand moved to something around his neck, a locket on a chain. He touched it once. Let go. His face showed nothing. Caleb walked to the bar, stopped 10 feet from Harding, didn't come closer, kept his hands visible. Officer Harding. The man turned, looked Caleb up and down. Stone. Yes, sir. Heard you've been making friends with the locals. The way he said locals made it clear what he meant. Caleb kept his voice level. There's a woman and her brother on my land. They're peaceful. Boy was sick. Almost died. They'll be moving on soon as he's strong enough to travel. That's so. Harding set his whiskey glass on the bar. The sound echoed. You understand, territorial codes require reporting any Apaches off reservation. Yes, sir. I also understand a child was dying and I had medicine. Murmurs around the room. The card players looked at each other. Harding's jaw tightened. Your land borders reservation territory. Makes you responsible for reporting illegal presence. Responsible for what exactly? Saving a boy's life. A voice from the corner. Drunk. Slurred. Should have let the little salve. Caleb turned his head slow. Stared at the man. The drunk's voice died. Silence filled the saloon. Thick. Heavy. Harding stepped between them. Gentlemen? He looked at Caleb. Stone, I appreciate your intentions, but I've got orders. Clear any unauthorized Apaches from settler land. You're harboring them. That's my concern. I'm sheltering neighbors who needed help. Neighbors. Harding's voice rose. They're fugitives. Could be involved in... She's got an arrow wound in her shoulder. Her brother had fever so bad he couldn't stand. They're running from trouble, not making it. You don't know that for certain. I do know it. Harding leaned closer. His breath smelled like whiskey and cigars. You're putting me in a difficult position. Stone, I've got a writ signed by the territorial marshal, orders to remove unauthorized Apaches from private land in this district. Caleb's hands curled into fists at his sides, uncurled. And I'm asking you to look at the situation. Really look. That boy's 14. He was dying. His sister saved his life. They're not raiders. They're survivors. The writ doesn't distinguish. Then maybe it should. Harding's face darkened. He touched the locket again. Brief. His fingers lingering on the metal. I have my orders. Stone, you also have judgment. Isn't that what officers are supposed to use? Judgment. Harding's voice went quiet. Dangerous. You're asking me to ignore direct orders from the territorial marshal. You understand what that means for my career, my family. You got family. The question seemed to catch him off guard. What's that? Simple question. You got family. Harding's hand went to the locket again. This time he didn't pull away. Wife, 2 daughters, St. Louis. What would you do if they needed medicine? If the only way to get it meant breaking some rule, that's different. How? It just is. No, sir. It's not. It's people trying to survive. Trying to protect the ones they love. That woman risked everything for her brother. I helped because I could. Because it was right. You telling me that's wrong. Silence fell, the long one heavier. The enlisted men watched their officer. Waiting. Harding's hand dropped from the locket. His shoulders tight. If I leave them on your land, if I don't execute this writ, I face court-martial, and you understand that I understand what I'm asking. Do you... Harding's voice shook slightly. You're asking me to choose between my duty and my conscience. That's not fair. Stone, nothing about this is fair. Not for you, not for me, not for them. Caleb gestured toward where his ranch lay beyond the town. But fair stopped mattering. All we got left is what's right. And you know what's right here. Harding's jaw worked. He looked at his glass, at his men, at Caleb. I can't just ignore the writ. I have to follow procedure. He paused. But procedure takes time. I need to file a report with the marshal. State that the individuals in question require further investigation to determine if they match the description in the writ. That report goes by telegraph to Santa Fe. Marshall reviews it, sends new orders back. Could take a week, maybe 10 days. Caleb's chest loosened slightly. And in the meantime, they stay on your land, under your custody. You're responsible for them. If they run, if there's any trouble, it falls on you. Understood. Yes, sir. 1 week, stone, maybe 10 days. That's all I can give you. Use it to get them somewhere safe, somewhere out of my jurisdiction. Harding picked up his glass, drained it. Because when those new orders come, I'll have to follow them. And next time, there won't be any delay. I understand. Thank you. Harding's face showed nothing. Don't thank me. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm following procedure. That's all. But his hand touched the locket one more time before he turned away. Caleb left the saloon, stepped into afternoon light. The doors swung shut behind him. His hand shook slightly as he untied Steadfast. 1 week, maybe 10 days, not much, but more than they'd had. He mounted, rode out of town, didn't look back at the faces watching from windows and doorways, but he felt their eyes, felt their judgment. Some would understand, most wouldn't, and word would spread fast. The rancher who sheltered Apaches, who defied the cavalry, who stood between the law and two fugitives. Some neighbors would stop speaking to him. Grissom would refuse his business. Next time he came to town, there'd be turned backs, whispers, maybe worse. He'd lived invisible for 3 years. Everyone would see him, judge him, remember. The thought should have worried him, should have made him want to turn around, go back, explain it was all a mistake. But instead he thought about Nahal's hand reaching out, about Kaya's face when the fever broke, about coffee made by someone else's hands filling his empty cabin with the smell of life. Worth it. Whatever came next. Worth it. Steadfast's stride ate up the miles. The sun dropped toward the horizon. Ahead, his land, his cabin. 2 people waiting who needed him. For the first time in 3 years, someone needed him for something besides being left alone. He urged Steadfast faster, not running, but not going slow either, eager almost. To get home, home. The word felt strange, foreign, and like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. But maybe he could learn it again. The cabin came into view, smoke rising from the chimney. Kaya had kept the fire going. He rode into the yard, dismounted. The door opened. Kaya stood there, her face tight with worry. What happened? Harding gave us time, 1 week, maybe 10 days. Then we need to figure out where you go next. Relief crossed her face. Then something else. And then you leave. Find somewhere safe. Somewhere the cavalry won't look. She nodded, but her eyes held a question she didn't ask. And you, what happens to you after we're gone? He didn't have an answer. Inside, Nahale sat at the table, eating beans. The boy looked up when Caleb entered. His face less fearful now. Still wary, but curious. Caleb unpacked the supplies, put them away, poured coffee, sat at the table. The 3 of them, eating together, like something almost normal. Outside, darkness fell. The coyotes started their evening song. And somewhere in Copper Falls, telegraph messages were being composed, reports filed. Wheels set in motion, that would eventually come back to this cabin, to this choice, to this moment of standing instead of stepping aside. 1 week, maybe 10 days. Then what? Days passed. Nahale grew stronger. Color returned to his face. He walked the perimeter of the cabin without stumbling, ate everything Kaya put in front of him. Caleb watched from the porch each morning, coffee in hand, counting the time left. 1 week, Harding had said, maybe 10 days. They were on day 9 now. The boy needed more time, but time was running out. On the morning of the 10th day, Caleb saddled Steadfast, packed supplies into the saddlebags, water, food, blankets, the leather pouch with his emergency money, 10 silver dollars, everything they'd need to get somewhere safe. Kaya watched from the doorway, the shawl around her shoulders. Where we go? Caleb tied the last knot on his bedroll. There's a trail through the hills, north of Copper Falls, leads to open country. 3 days, maybe 4. You'll clear the territory. Get far enough they won't follow. She said nothing. He checked Steadfast's cinch, tightened it. I'll guide you past the town. Make sure you get on the right path. After that, he stopped. Didn't finish. After that, she'd be on her own again. Her and Nahale, running, hiding, surviving however they could. And then, her voice quiet. Then you keep going, north. Follow the stars at night if you lose the trail. Alone. You've done it before. She nodded slow. Yes, we have. Nahale came out, wearing the shirt Caleb had given him 2 days ago. Too big. Sleeves rolled past his wrists, but clean, whole. The boy looked at Caleb, said something in Apache. Kaya translated. He thanks you, says you saved his life. Caleb's throat tightened. He nodded to the boy. You're tough, tougher than most. Kaya spoke to her brother. The boy smiled. Small but real. They gathered what little they had. The empty medicine bottle, the peppermint stick papers Nahale had folded and kept, a spare water skin Caleb had given them. Caleb mounted, pulled Nahale up behind him. The boy's arms wrapped around his waist, thin but steady now. Kaya walked beside them, her hand on Steadfast's flank, her stride even. They left the cabin. The door opened behind them. Fire banked, coffee pots sitting on the stove. Like Caleb would be coming back, like this was just a ride, shot goodbye. The trail led north. Through country, Caleb knew, every rock, every twisted cedar, every turn. They rode in silence. The sun climbed. Heat pressed down even though it was October now. The air dry. Nahale's grip on Caleb's waist never loosened. The boy's breathing steady against his back. 2 hours. 3. The landmarks changed. They were leaving Caleb's land now, moving into the space between his ranch and the town, territory belonging to everyone and no one. Ahead. The trail split and left to Copper Falls, right into the hills, open country beyond. Caleb reined in at the fork. A juniper marked the spot. Lightning had split it years ago. 2 trunks growing from one root, pointing different direction. He dismounted, helped Nahale down. The boy stood on his own. No shaking. Stronger than 10 days ago. Still too young for what he'd been through, but alive. Kaya stood beside her brother, her hand on his shoulder. Caleb pointed to the right fork. That trail. Follow it 3 days. You'll see a mesa shaped like a closed fist. Go around the west side. Past that is open country. No towns, no soldiers. You've been there. Long time ago. Before. He stopped. For Sarah. Before everything. Is good place. It's empty. That's enough. She nodded, looked at the trail, and back at him. Thank you. For everything. He handed her the leather pouch. Money. For supplies when you reach somewhere. She stared at it. Didn't take it. Kaya. We can't. Take it. You'll need it. Her fingers closed around the pouch. Slow. Thank you. He stepped back, picked up Steadfast's reins. 3 days. Don't make fires big enough to see from a distance. Don't trust anyone in uniform. We know this. Right. You know this. Silence. The sun beat down. A hawk circled overhead. Crying, Kaya looked at the trail, at her brother. Back to Caleb. You go now. Yeah, I go now. But his feet didn't move. She tilted her head, studying him. You look like man who is not sure. I'm sure. You need to get going. Harding's deadline could be up any day. Yes. She took Nahal's hand, started toward the right fork, took 3 steps, stopped, turned back, walked to Steadfast, put her hand on the horse's bridle. No. Caleb blinked. What? No. We don't go. Kaya, you have to. We stay. You can't stay. Harding's coming. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but he's coming. I know. Then why? Because you want us to stay. The words hit like a fist. Knocked the air from his lungs. That's not I'm trying to keep you safe. No. Her voice came steady, certain. You're trying to make us leave. Different thing. It's the same. Is it? Steadfast shifted. Kaya's hand stayed on the bridle. Firm. The horse couldn't move forward. Caleb looked down at her. The sun behind her made her hair shine, her face in shadow, but her eyes clear, direct. Let go of my horse. No. Kaya, you can leave. You can ride away right now. But you know you don't want to. His hand shook on the reins. What I want doesn't matter. What keeps you alive matters. What keeps that boy safe matters. And what keeps you alive? The question stopped him cold. She stepped closer, her hand still on the bridle. 3 years you've been half dead. Sarah gone, baby gone, and you still breathing but not living. Why? I don't. You help us, not because you owe us. You help because you need to. Need to feel something again. I need to matter to someone. Caleb's throat closed. He couldn't speak. Kaya's voice stayed soft but unyielding. I see you, Caleb Stone. I see man who tired of running, tired of empty cabin and empty life, tired of waking up alone. And you don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? She released the bridle, stepped back. I'm widow too. I know what it is. To lose everything, and to keep breathing when you want to stop. To go through days like walking through fog. Her words landed heavy. True. And I know, she continued. Helping someone else is the only thing that makes the fog clear, even just a little. Caleb looked away, at the trail, at the hills beyond, at anywhere but her face. We need to go, she said. But not apart. Together. Together, we're back to my ranch, where Harding will find you. Yes, that's crazy? Maybe. But is also brave. He couldn't finish, because she was right. Going back was brave, and stupid, and necessary somehow. You have land, Kaya said. You have rights. Harding has orders, but he also has rules. He can't just take us. Not if we under your protection. Not without papers. Not without time. He'll find a way. Maybe, but he'll have to try. And trying takes time. Time is what we need. Caleb shook his head. You're asking me to stand between you and the cavalry. Risk my land, my name, everything. Yes. Why would I do that? She looked at him, her eyes steady. Because you already did. When you brought us to your cabin instead of leaving us in Canyon, that was choice. You just haven't admitted it yet. The truth of it sat in his gut like a stone. She was right. He'd made the choice already. Everything else was just trying to unmake it. I don't need husband, Kaya said quiet. Nahaley doesn't need father. We need someone who stands with us. Not in front, not behind. Beside. Someone who stops running long enough to stand still. She paused. Let the words settle. You gonna run forever? Or you gonna stand for once? Caleb's hands tightened on the reins, his whole body rigid. Sarah's face flashed in his mind. Her smile, her hands on her belly, their daughter they'd never met. 3 years of grief, of emptiness, of running from anything that might hurt. And here was this woman, this stranger, asking him to stop, to stand, to choose being alive over being safe. His chest hurt, like something frozen was cracking, and the thaw burned. I already failed, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Failed Sarah. Failed my daughter. What makes you think I won't fail you? Sarah had want you buried with her. I don't know what she'd want. Yes, you do. You just won't say it. Wind moved through the sage. The juniper branches creaked. Nahala watched them both, not understanding words, but understanding everything else. Caleb dismounted, stood on the ground, eye level with Kaya now. If I stay, if we go back, if I stand with you, he swallowed. Harding will come, others will come. Won't be easy. I know. Could lose everything. The ranch, my name in town, love it. You already lost everything 3 years ago. What's left to lose? He looked at her, really looked, saw the strength in her face, the quiet will of someone who'd already survived worse than he could imagine. Are you sure about this? Are you? He opened his mouth to answer, closed it. Was he sure about standing instead of running? Sure about choosing to live instead of just exist? His hands had stopped shaking. That meant something. I'm not good at this, he said. Being with people, standing for things. Then maybe time to learn. Caleb looked at the trail. The right fork leading to open country. Safety, maybe. Distance, definitely. Then looked at Kaya, at Nahaley standing beside her, at these two people who'd somehow become his reason. All right. The word came rough, final. Let's go home. Kaya's shoulders dropped, relief showing just for a moment before she controlled it. Nahaley said something in Apache. Kaya answered. The boy's face lit up. They mounted, all 3 of them, turned steadfast back the way they'd come, away from the open country, away from safety, toward the ranch, toward whatever was coming. The sun angled west, afternoon light turning everything gold. They had maybe 3 days left, maybe less, before Harding's new orders came through, but they'd face it together. Not running anymore. The cabin came into view as they crested the rise, dark against the sky. Smoke should have been rising from the chimney. Wasn't. The fire had gone out while they were gone. They'd left in a hurry, hadn't banked it properly. Caleb dismounted, helped Nahale down. The boy ran to the cabin, excited, like coming home. Kaya stood beside Caleb, watching her brother. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. Couldn't trust his voice yet. They went inside, got the fire going, made coffee, started beans for supper, fell into routine like they'd been doing it for years instead of days. Nahal explored, found things. A wooden spoon, a tin cup, showed them to Kaya, small treasures. The cabin filled with voices, with life. Caleb sat at the table, coffee in front of him, watching. The shawl hung on its peg, gray wool. Sarah's hands had made it, and Kaya wore it sometimes now. When mornings were cold, the grief was still there, would always be there. But it wasn't the only thing anymore. Evening came. They ate, sat on the porch after. Stars came out, clear, bright. Nahale fell asleep inside, exhausted. Kaya and Caleb stayed on the porch, not talking, just sitting. Finally she spoke. "When Harding comes, what we do, I'll talk to him, tell him you're under my protection, and if he doesn't listen," Caleb's jaw tightened, "then I'll make him listen somehow." More silence. "Caleb, yeah, why you really come back with us to ranch?" He looked at the stars, thought about Sarah, about 3 years of emptiness, about finding Kaya in that arroyo. "I was more afraid of being alone than I was of anything else." She nodded. Like she'd known already, the night deepened, cold settling in. They sat until the fire inside burned low, until the temperature drove them in. Caleb gave Nahale his bed again, took the chair, but this time when he closed his eyes, he slept, really slept, dreamed of morning coffee, of fence posts being repaired, of a woman who stood beside him instead of leaving. When dawn came, someone had covered him with the shawl while he slept. He pulled it closer, smelled sage and wood smoke and something else. Life, maybe, outside. The sun rose on the last day before Harding's deadline ended. Time to face what came next. Morning came cold. Caleb woke to the smell of coffee. He sat up in the chair. The shawl fell from his shoulders. Someone had draped it over him in the night. Kaya stood at the stove, stirring something in the pot. Her movements practiced now. At home in his space, Nahale sat at the table, eating cornbread, his color good, his eyes bright. 10 days ago he'd been dying. Now he looked like any boy eager for the day to start. "Morning," Caleb said. Kaya turned, handed him a cup, steam rising from black coffee. He drank. She'd made it strong, the way he liked it. They ate quickly. Nobody said what they were all thinking, that today was likely the day, that Harding's deadline had passed, that new orders would have come through by now. After breakfast, Caleb went outside, fed the chickens. The birds scattered when he approached, came back cautious, pecking at the grain he scattered. He checked the fence line, found the posts he'd meant to fix for a year. Should do it. Should have done it long ago. Maybe he would, if there was time after. The sound of hoofbeats stopped him mid-step. Multiple horses, coming from the north, From town. Caleb's hand went to his hip. No gun there. He'd left the rifle inside by the door. He turned, watched the riders crest the rise. 5 horses, blue uniforms, brass buttons catching morning sun. Harding led, his back straight, his face composed. Every inch the cavalry officer. Behind him, 4 enlisted men, young, their hands near their weapons but not touching. Nervous energy coming off them like heat. The door opened behind Caleb. Kaya stepped out, Nahaley behind her. The boy's eyes went wide when he saw the soldiers. "Go inside," Caleb said quiet. "No." "Kaya?" "No. We stand with you." The riders pulled up 20 feet from the cabin. Harding dismounted. His boots hit the ground with purpose. His men stayed mounted. "Stone, Officer Harding, I believe you know why I'm here." "I do." Harding's eyes moved to Kaya, to Nahaley, back to Caleb. 10 days I gave you. Time's up. New orders came through you yesterday from Santa Fe. They're on my land, under my protection. Your protection doesn't supersede territorial authority. Harding pulled a folded paper from his coat. I have a writ, signed and countersigned, authorizing removal of unauthorized Apaches from private land in this district. What law says I can't shelter people who need help? They're not just people needing help. They're fugitives from a military action, from what being chased, being shot at. That boy was dying of fever. His sister saved his life. That's not fugitive. That's survival. Harding's jaw tightened. He unfolded the paper. The writ is specific. Removal of hostile Apache raiders. Look at them. Caleb took 2 steps forward, hands visible, no weapon. Really look, not at what that paper says, at what's standing in front of you. Harding's eyes moved to Kaya, to the way she stood, shoulders back, chin level, protective of her brother but not threatening, no weapon visible, just a woman and a boy. Then to Nahaley, thin, young, wearing a shirt 3 sizes too big, fear in his eyes but standing anyway. The paper crumpled slightly in Harding's hand. I have orders. Stone, then I'm asking you to question those orders. Caleb kept his voice level, reasonable. Look at the situation. Decide if removing a sick boy and his sister serves justice or just serves paperwork. You understand what you're asking. You're asking me to disobey a direct order from the territorial marshal. I'm asking you to use judgment. Make a decision based on what you see, not what someone who's never met them wrote on paper. Harding's hand tightened on the writ. The order is clear. Hostile Apache raiders. Are they hostile? Caleb gestured to Kaya. She's got an arrow wound in her shoulder. You think raiders shoot their own, and that boy couldn't hurt anyone if he tried. He was dying 3 weeks ago. One of the enlisted men shifted in his saddle. The leather creaked loud in the silence. Harding's face showed strain. His hand moved to the locket around his neck, touched it once, brief, like drawing strength from something. If I leave them here, he said quiet. If I ride away without executing this writ, I'll face questions. My superiors will want to know why. Tell them the truth. Tell them the individuals don't match the description. It's not that simple. Why not? Because? Harding stopped. His shoulders sagged just slightly. Because I have a career, a family depending on me, a pension that comes if I follow orders and goes away if I don't. Caleb nodded. I understand what I'm asking you to risk. Do you... Harding's voice rose. You're asking me to put everything on the line for people I don't know, for a cause that isn't mine. I'm asking you to do what's right, even when it costs you something. Silence fell, heavy, complete. The horses stamped. One snorted. The men waited for their officer's decision. Harding looked at the paper in his hand, at Caleb, at Kaya and Nahale. His shoulders straightened. He turned to one of his men. Corporal Hayes, the young soldier, sat straighter. Sir, state what you observe. The woman and the boy. Your assessment. Hayes looked uncomfortable. His eyes moved to Kaya, to Nahale, back to his officer. I observe 2 civilians, sir, non-combatants. Do they appear hostile to you? Hayes hesitated. They appear peaceful, sir, but I can't say for certain. Answer the question. Corporal, hostile or not? Not hostile, sir. From what I can see, Harding turned to another soldier. Private Morton, your observation? Morton swallowed. They look like people who've been running, sir. Refugees, maybe. Harding nodded slow. Like something inside him was settling into place. He looked at the writ one more time. Read it careful. Then folded it and put it back in his coat. This writ requires Yamatse removal of hostile Apache raiders from settler land. His voice came formal, official. Based on my direct observation and the testimony of my men, the individuals currently present do not match the description of hostile raiders as defined in the order. Caleb's chest loosened slightly. However, Harding continued, they are still off reservation without proper authorization. That constitutes a separate violation, one that requires formal reporting through proper channels. How does that work? I file a report with the Territorial Marshal's office, by telegraph. Stating the situation requires further investigation before action can be taken. The Marshal reviews that report, consults with his superiors, issues new orders based on updated information. Harding paused. That process takes time, 2 weeks minimum, maybe more. And until then, they remain here on your land under your legal custody. You're responsible for them. If they leave, if there's any incident, any trouble whatsoever, it falls on you, personally and legally. Understood? Yes, sir. Understood. Harding mounted his horse. His men followed suit. This isn't over. Stone, those new orders will come. And when they do, I'll have to act on them, use this time, get them somewhere safe, somewhere beyond my jurisdiction. We will, thank you. Don't thank me. I'm following procedure. That's all. But his hand touched the locket one more time, brief. Then he gathered his reins. 2 weeks. Stone, maybe 3 if bureaucracy moves slow. After that, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. He wheeled his horse, started to ride away, his men following, then stopped, turned back. For what it's worth, I think you're doing right by them, even if I can't say so officially. Then he rode away, the hoofbeats fading into distance. Caleb stood in the yard, not moving, not breathing. Kaya's hand touched his shoulder. Light. There. Gone. Thank you. He nodded. Still couldn't speak. Nahale came and stood beside him. The boy's hand slipped into Caleb's. Small, warm, trusting. They stood like that, the three of them, watching the dust settle where Harding had disappeared. Finally, Caleb found his voice. "We should get to work. That fence won't fix itself." Kaya almost smiled. "No, it won't." They went about the day. Caleb showed Nahale how to use the brace and bit, how to drill straight, how to set the auger right. The boy's hands were quick, learned fast. By afternoon, 2 new posts stood firm, the fence solid again. First real work Caleb had done in 3 years that felt like it mattered. They ate supper together. Beans, cornbread, coffee, passing food, refilling cups, like something normal, like something that might last. After, they sat on the porch and found it. Stars came out, bright, clear. Akaya wrapped the shawl around her shoulders, the gray wool Sarah had made. Caleb looked at it. The grief was still there. Would always be, but it didn't consume everything anymore. "Caleb," Kaya's voice quiet. "Yeah. What happens when new orders come in 2 weeks or 3? Don't know. We'll figure it out then. And if we can't stay, if they make us leave." He looked at her, at Nahale dozing against the cabin wall. "Then we find another way, another place, something. We—" The word hung in the air. Caleb's throat tightened. "Yeah. If that's, if you want." She nodded, slow, certain. "Yes. We want." More silence. The comfortable kind. Eventually, Nahale went inside, fell asleep on the bed. Kaya stood. "I should sleep too." "Yeah." She paused at the door. Caleb. "Yeah." Sarah. She would be proud. His chest constricted. He couldn't answer. She went inside, left him alone on the porch, but not lonely. Not anymore. He sat there until the fire inside burned low, until the cold drove him inside. Kaya had made a pallet on the floor for herself, left the bed for Nahale, the chair for Caleb. He looked at them sleeping, at the shawl draped over Kaya's shoulders, at the boy curled under the blanket, at the life that had found its way into his empty cabin. He banked the fire, blew out the lamp, sat in his chair. Sleep came easier now. No dreams of the dead, just rest. And when morning came, he woke to coffee brewing, to Nahale outside feeding the chickens, badly, the birds scattering everywhere. Caleb stood, walked to the window, watched the boy chase the chickens, heard him laugh when they escaped. Kaya stood at the stove. She didn't ask if he was all right. Didn't make him explain. Just slid a cup of coffee toward him when he sat at the table. They drank in comfortable silence, outside. The sun rose over his land, over the fence he'd repaired, over the barn that still needed work, over the garden plot, waiting to be planted come spring, over a life that had been frozen and was frozen no longer. The coffee was hot, black, strong. He drank it. And for the first time in 3 years, Caleb Stone wasn't just going through motions. He was living. Whatever came next, new orders, more confrontations, difficult choices, they'd face it. Not alone, together, the way it should be, the way Sarah would have wanted. The thought didn't hurt as much anymore. He looked at the shawl hanging on its peg, gray wool, every stitch a memory. It would stay there, always. But now there were other things too, other people, other reasons to wake up and keep breathing. Nahale's laughter came through the window. Kaya smiled at the sound, And Caleb realized that grief and joy could exist in the same space, that honoring the dead didn't mean refusing to live, that sometimes the best way to remember was to keep going, to stand when it would be easier to run, to choose being alive over being safe. He finished his coffee, stood. Let's see if we can teach that boy how to actually feed chickens. Kaya's smile widened. Good luck. They went outside together, into the morning, into whatever came next. Ready? There's something quiet that settles in after a story like this. Something tender and unresolved. The kind of weight you carry when you realize a man stopped running. Even when running would have been the easier choice. When standing still meant facing all the grief he'd been avoiding for 3 long years. Many of us know what that feels like. To go through the motions so long we forget what it means to actually be present. To wake up one morning and realize we've been holding our breath since we lost someone. Some of us have stood at that crossroads too, the place where you choose between the loneliness you know and the risk of letting someone stand beside you again. Caleb didn't find all his answers. The grief didn't disappear. New orders might still come. The future stayed uncertain. And maybe that's all right. Maybe some things don't need to be resolved to matter. Maybe choosing to stay, to stand with someone, to let life back into an empty space, maybe that's enough for one day. The story can rest here. So can we. Thank you for sitting with this, for staying through the quiet parts and the heavy parts.